This is a fantasy story summoned by a necromancer. The story of rising to become the overlord of bones. As a result, a system descended from the heavens. Since then, it acquired a cheat code. Moreover, its attributes will not disappear with each reincarnation. However, its owner was not so fortunate. In a dark cave, a skeleton soldier with scattered bones was crawling on the ground, heading towards death. His owner, Lord Sexes, was being surrounded by invaders in the dungeon and was pierced through by a sword. It could only watch helplessly. It watched as its owner fell in a pool of blood. The skeleton soldier's biggest dream is to be with Lord Sexes. They live a simple and happy life together in the dungeon. Obviously, the author did not arrange it that way. He hates his own incompetence. He hates his own weakness. He hates his evasive behaviors. He hates to see his loved ones die tragically in front of him. Now he can't even save his own head. It seems that this time it's really over. But then a window suddenly popped up in his mind. Are the conditions met? And is the assimilation rate decreasing? Is this tied to the system? Back then, I was lowly and humble like a weed. After my rebirth, you will definitely be out of my reach. Then, there was a loud thunderous sound. The skeleton soldier suddenly woke up. He felt somewhat familiar. What happened? Wasn't it supposed to be destroyed and vanished into smoke and ash? A pop-up window appeared with a ding sound. Success in inheriting, the attribute values are the same as before death. However, his level dropped from level 36 to level 1. Just as he was puzzled, a woman named Ruby stopped him. She claimed to have summoned the skeleton soldier. He felt the woman in front of him looked familiar. She couldn't be from 20 years ago. It's time to awaken your rookie necromancer. He has returned to the birthplace of 20 years ago. This is definitely not a dream. I must still be alive. That means going back to the past. He thought about the next plot again. Ruby will die in the hands of the mountain bandits. It will take a year for oneself to be reborn. Since I have returned to the past, the adult must still be alive. He wants to find the master to tell her what will happen in the future. But so what? Can I still protect it? Recall the past. Am I the only one who failed to protect the adults? No one did. He suddenly picked up Ruby, wanting to change history. And he said he would protect her. Ruby was very surprised to see Skeleton speaking. After the surprise, Ruby chose to believe. She suppressed the doubts in her heart. Skeleton Soldier, however, thought, if I can't even protect her, then what's the point of being reborn? At this moment, a window popped up S-level plot. Then Ruby's status bar appeared. Skeleton Soldier noticed something was amiss. He immediately took Ruby and hid. At this time, a group of people on horseback is approaching the two of them. It seems that these are not ordinary mountain bandits. They are well equipped. They must be here for Ruby. The soldiers did not see anyone preparing to leave. Ruby reveals her identity. She is the heir of the Grand Lord. A cold arrow struck Ruby at this moment. Looks like they pretended to leave, quite cunning. The fatty brandished a weapon and shouted, I am the current Grand Lord's envoy, the Grim Reaper. After speaking, he lecherously assessed Ruby. He was about to make a move on her. Skeleton Soldier picked up a stone and fiercely smashed it towards the fatty. The fatty fell to the ground, facing the startled Ruby. The Skeleton Soldier reached out to comfort. I will protect you. The next move caught him off guard. The correct way for the enemy to start is to make a move first. The fatty stood up. Wonderingly, he said, this woman can actually use necromancy. Then he picked up his weapon and smashed the skeleton's head. His consciousness began to blur. He thought he had once again failed to protect his master. Last time, we mentioned that Skeleton Soldier's skull was crushed again. Will history repeat itself? Please take a look at this. Skeleton Soldier followed the familiar procedure. He was summoned once again. What he saw at first glance was indeed the familiar Ruby. He raised his hands in disbelief. I have revived again. I revived with the memories from before. What's different from the first resurrection is that this time, a window popped up showing his death record. Then, another window popped up showing additional upgradable attributes. There were also some inexplicable dialogue boxes. Skeleton Soldier. Attributes that can be selected for enhancement. He thought about his head being shattered before. He decisively chose to increase his physical resistance. Obviously, the favor in his heart. It's of no use. After all, the weakness of creatures like skeletons is their fear of blunt weapons. The plot is the same as last time. The repetition has started. He is estimating the time. The team of people and horses are about to arrive. We cannot sit and wait for death. To avoid the failure of last time, he formulated a new strategy. He said to Ruby, "Someone is coming right away." You hide quickly. Are you talking? Ruby was surprised and said, "The skeleton can still talk." The scope is too small, especially when it comes to the skeleton. She obviously didn't believe it. Ruby asked, "How do you know?" Skeleton Soldier couldn't say either. He had been through the plot himself. Said casually, "Just my guess." "Please believe me." He looked at Ruby, who was hesitating. He thought he could completely abandon the woman in front of him. But this is just the beginning of everything. I couldn't protect Lord Sexes. Can't I protect Ruby either? The sound of hooves is getting closer. He borrowed a short sword from Ruby. He said he would protect her. He made the master hide behind the rock. The fatty officer brought his minion. Sure enough, appeared on time. The skeleton soldier is ready to face the enemy alone. The minion looked around in all directions. The skeleton soldier hid inside the coffin where it resurrected. Then, he slowly stood up. He quietly picked up the short sword. He delivered a fatal blow to the minion. A blow to the throat. A system prompt popped up in the window. The level has been upgraded. While the skeleton soldier secretly rejoiced. He once again fell victim to foul play. That fatty officer. He once again took a hammer and smashed towards the skeleton soldier. Skeleton fell to the ground. The fatty felt doubtful in his heart. What kind of skeleton is this? Its head didn't even shatter. The skeleton soldier right now can't move after being hit. The fatty officer seized the opportunity to strike again with the hammer. The skeleton soldier couldn't escape death. Oh my God! This time it failed again. What will happen next? Follow me, and you will find out. Load the file again for another rebirth. It's a familiar thunderstorm day. I died. Once again returned to the starting point. Skeleton soldier. Calmly rising from the coffin. What he can be sure of is, if he dies, everything will start all over again. What should be done if this situation keeps repeating? Escape? Their target, after all, is that woman. But what can be achieved by escaping? Can one really achieve one's wishes like that? But the experiences of all these years are still vivid in my mind. For humans, their skeletons are just a pile of experience points. How can the chosen one be content with mediocrity? He will change it all. He killed the archer. He obtained a new attribute. He added it all to agility. The third time I was resurrected. Although I killed the chubby officer. But still couldn't escape death once more. This is my fourth resurrection. Increase in agility attributes. Makes the skeleton soldier as agile as a fish in water. The fourth resurrection. With the increase in experience points, the level continues to rise. Meeting the enemy once again. Skeleton soldier. Swiftly and decisively took down the minion. The fatty officer looked surprised. This is simply not possible. Just a skeleton, that's all. The skeleton soldier continued, swinging his blade towards the fatty officer. The fatty officer hurriedly dodged. He wielded a large hammer to confront the skeleton soldier. Skeleton soldier utilizes agile movements. while dodging the hammer at the same time. He slashed the fatty's throat. The fatty's blood splattered all around. He fell to the ground and died. Before death, he still couldn't believe it. After 4 reincarnations, Skeleton Soldier finally succeeded in resolving their issues. He saved Ruby. Ruby walked out with an incredulous expression, looking like she had survived a disaster. I died 3 times. I finally have the strength to protect someone now. Skeleton Soldier noticed. Ruby is holding a piece of stone in her hand. He asked her what she was doing. Ruby said, "If you are in danger, of course I will help." Skeleton Soldier was stunned. He glanced at Ruby's status bar without saying a word. "Please help me organize the events that have taken place during this period, Skeleton Soldier. After one's own death, they will return to the grave where they first woke up. The level will return to level 1, but skills and attributes will continue to accumulate. You will revive according to the Skeleton Soldier. The experiences encountered afterwards will give him new additional attributes. What the Skeleton Soldier is most worried about is how many times he is left to be reborn. Some prerequisites need to be added each time he is reborn in order to live well. What will happen next? Like, follow, comment. Finally, you can continue with the new storyline. After the death of the Skeleton Soldier, he revived again. The Skeleton Soldier was accompanied by Ruby. They walked in the long dark tunnel. Ruby seemed to be chattering about something. Skeleton Soldier wandered far away. Ruby asked, "Are you listening to me?" Skeleton Soldier replied, "Sorry, I zoned out." Ruby wasn't upset. She continued to talk about everything about herself. Her father was originally the Earl of Atla region. He was known to be upright and unbending, honest and unyielding. A few weeks ago, the new emperor ascended the throne. He began to recruit soldiers on a large scale, using force to solve problems and increasing military training. He did not hide his ambitions in the slightest. He promoted bellicose individuals. Peaceful individuals began to protest, and my father is among them. Her father is also involved as a relative. However, her father was killed and died in front of her. She hates her own helplessness. After saying these words, Ruby choked up a bit. She did not continue. The Skeleton Soldier looked at Ruby. He almost knew what was going on. And then he remembered what was about to happen next. The new emperor invaded other countries for 9 years in order to unify the world. Then, 16 demon kings began to resurrect one after another. It seems that her father, he became one of the many sacrifices. Thinking this, Skeleton Soldier, although I cannot, by my own efforts, stop this long-standing war, I can still protect the woman in front of me. He made a promise to Ruby that he would protect her to the death. Ruby was quite touched upon hearing this. Skeleton Soldier looked at Ruby in this moment and was reminded of his former master, Sexus. The feeling of powerlessness from the past will never happen again. I must become stronger to protect and guard this woman well. Then the two of them decided to head to the nearby village. Ruby is curious about the Skeleton Soldier, who seems to know a lot. The Skeleton Soldier is evasive. Ruby continues to guess. The Skeleton Soldier remains silent. At this moment, they found the exit. The Skeleton Soldier breathed a sigh of relief. They rushed out of the cave entrance. Finally, they walked out of the long dark tunnel. They were stunned by the sight in front of them. What will happen next? Will their journey go smoothly? Pay attention to the details. In front of them is a snowy mountain. Ruby was pleasantly surprised. She hurried to show Skeleton Soldier. Skeleton Soldier said indifferently, "Snow is just a pile of crystals." After saying that, a snowball hit him directly in the head, making him look slightly embarrassed. Ruby laughed and said, "Can you stop being so stiff?" Skeleton Soldier, on the other hand, expressed solemnly, "This is my nature." Ruby nodded in acknowledgement, ending the awkward conversation. Later, they continued on their way. Set off to Narlan. Need to climb over what's in front of you. The steep snowy mountain. After climbing over a small mountain range, the two continued. After Ruby spoke to the skeleton soldier. I will buy you a suit of armor in the future. Skeleton soldier was puzzled. I don't need that. Ruby said. You can't just walk around like this, can you? The skeleton soldier thought to himself that he did indeed stand out in his ghostly appearance, so he agreed. At this moment, Ruby slipped under her foot. She fell off the cliff. A stitch in time saves 9. Skeleton soldier instantly caught her hand. Check the previous agility attribute. It's not in vain. He successfully pulled Ruby up. Ruby thanked him gently and said, You've been protecting me all along. Skeleton soldier remained silent, with 1,000 emotions in his heart. Luckily, Ruby doesn't know that he has failed many times before. They continued on their journey. In the treacherous snow-covered mountain terrain, they supported each other, and after a long journey, a green scene came into view. Narland was close by. They reached the city gate. Ruby expressed excitement. Now it's my turn to protect you. You can't enter the city. I'll be back soon. I am a little worried about Skeleton Soldier. Can you do it alone? Ruby vowed confidently, saying it's no big deal. Ruby turned around and left. She waved goodbye to the Skeleton Soldier. She said, You must wait for me. The Skeleton Soldier watched as her figure gradually moved further away. He stood in place waiting for her, feeling somewhat worried in his heart. Like this, the Skeleton Soldier waited for 1 hour. 2 hours. 2 days. Because she said she would come back. I must wait for her to return. The Skeleton Soldier who has been waiting all along. But at this moment, an unusual situation was discovered. What will happen this time? It was mentioned last time. Ruby has not returned all along. Skeleton Soldier. He found an abnormal situation. He heard voices not far away. He quickly ducked into the bushes. He saw someone pushing a cart coming over. He heard the person complaining. Dirty work, hard work. Why is it always me doing it? While complaining, the person threw something away. Skeleton Soldier. There was a bad feeling in his heart. What he hoped for more was. Ruby doesn't want to wander around on her own. Already found a place. Settled down and abandoned him. After all, he has gotten used to being looked at with disdain by others. But he thinks that Ruby is an approachable girl. If being abandoned, just need to part ways. But Ruby clearly said that she would be back soon. She was frightened by the scene before her. Why did it happen like this? Ruby is in the village. What exactly happened? Why did she die again? The Skeleton Soldier, looking at Ruby battered on the ground, was reminded of the death scene of Sexus, his previous master. Unable to contain his sorrow, a surge of anger rose in him. At this moment, 2 people carrying Ruby's body approached while complaining. One of them cursed her for being unlucky to have committed suicide. The Skeleton Soldier, suppressing his anger, did not emerge from the bushes. The man in a cloak continued to complain, while the bearded man stood indifferently aside, saying, We finally caught a commodity, and before we could sell it, you got her killed. You should be content with not having the captain killed. The Skeleton Soldier grasped the main point. Suicide? Commodity? A man in a cloak, looking around for Ruby's body, with a lecherous expression. The bearded man turned and left. The cloaked man continued searching. This time he looked pleased. It turned out he had found it. He stood beside Ruby's body, his features contorted, his ugly soul, a twisted heart that made one nauseous. He was about to do something vile to Ruby. He was completely unaware of the danger behind him. Skeleton Soldier is full of killing intent. He picked up the short sword from the ground. A clean and precise strike hit the cloaked man. The splattered blood and the cloaked man's screams couldn't extinguish the Skeleton Soldier's rage. The Skeleton Soldier threatened in a low voice. If you don't want to die quickly, shut your mouth. The cloaked man endured the pain and asked about the identity of the skeleton soldier. The skeleton soldier ignored him and twisted the sword at his waist. The cloaked man trembled in unbearable pain. Skeleton soldier interrogated the woman, asking why she was here. The cloaked man said he was sent by the innkeeper. I don't know anything else. Skeleton soldier continued to ask, who did this to her? It was the captain of the guard. It was all arranged by him. It's not my business. Skeleton soldier became even angrier after hearing that. What you did just now has nothing to do with you either. Skeleton soldier directly drew out the short sword. Cloaked man fell to the ground. Before his death, he turned back to see who had attacked him. He was even more shocked. It turned out to be a skeleton. Then he died. To maintain a stable position, one must strike ruthlessly. Skeleton soldier watches Ruby, who died with her eyes open. He knew she had not abandoned herself. Countless emotions surged in his heart. He knelt beside Ruby. He reached out and closed Ruby's eyes. His thirst for revenge became even stronger. Don't worry, Ruby. I will help you seek revenge for sure. I won't let the hotel owner or the security guard captain off the hook, not one of them. Will he be able to find the murderer and uncover the truth? Please continue reading. The moon is dark, the wind is high, it's a night for killing. The moonlight reflects on the skeleton soldier, casting a lonely figure. His heavy steps echo in the quiet town in the deep night, especially clear. He knocks on the door of the inn. An uncle, with an unhappy expression, opens the door and grumbles about who's knocking so late at night. With a loud thud, a foot with nothing but bones kicks at the innkeeper's belly. He was kicked and sent flying. The innkeeper struggles to get up. He looks at this unexpected guest, then kneels down and begs for mercy. Don't kill me! I don't know anything. After all, recognizing the situation is the right choice. At this point, the innkeeper, who still hasn't seen the appearance of the visitor, was questioned by the skeleton soldier. The boss trembled as he replied, I really don't know where the two members who were sent to pursue Adla Grand Lord's daughter have gone. And besides, I'm just a small innkeeper. I don't have the ability to deal with them either. Skeleton soldier spoke to him. Adla and the organization that had just been mentioned felt confused. The boss breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing that. It was evident that the visitor was not from the organization. The skeleton soldier stepped on the boss's head. With a click, a sword was thrust in front of the boss. Please answer my question quickly. 3 days ago, the daughter of the Grand Lord escaped and came here. The guards here took her away. The innkeeper asked, Are you with her? He kept making small movements on the side. He took the opportunity while the skeleton soldier wasn't paying attention. He stood up and tried to run. The skeleton soldier raised a hand and the blade fell. A sword stabbed into his thigh. The movement was clean and neat, rendering him unable to move. The innkeeper screamed repeatedly. Skeleton soldier strikes again, plunging the sword into his face. The demonic whisper echoed in his ear. Answer my question. Why do this? The boss became even more frightened and quickly said, That woman came to buy armor. He simply handed her over to the captain of the guard. He sent her to the Nayland Gentlemen's Club as a slave. Nayland Gentlemen's Club caught the attention of the skeleton soldier. As the skeleton soldier pondered, a black serpent-like entity appeared on the innkeeper's neck. Then it seemed to come alive as it burst out from the veins. It tightly wrapped around the innkeeper's neck. It strangled the innkeeper to death. Skeleton soldier saw the situation. What is this? A curse? To prevent the leakage of secrets? It seems that he is just a pawn as well. What exactly is the Nayland Gentlemen's Club organization? Everyone connected to Ruby is affiliated with this organization. The truth is still shrouded in mystery, hidden in the darkness. To uncover the real culprit who killed Ruby, Skeleton Soldier has decided. It's better to gather information first. Don't engage in battles unprepared. At this moment, he saw a suit of armor in the corner. He looked at the suit of armor. He remembered Ruby. So he put on the suit of armor, carrying Ruby's intention to become stronger together. I can't admit defeat. A few days later, Skeleton Soldier is raiding a dungeon. In this dungeon, all the inhabitants are skeletons of the same race as him. He strikes them down with ease, like cutting through grass. He mechanically reaps them. Why do skeleton soldiers have to kill their own kind? Let's rewind the timeline back to a few days ago. He arrived at this dungeon for the first time. He is slowly exploring the depths of the dungeon. Faced with the suddenly emerging skeleton monsters, he is ready to take them on. At this moment, a flash of blade light is seen. The skeletons are torn apart and perish on the spot. Then, there is a crash. The boss's hammer smashed down. Skeleton Soldier dodged, and then raised his sword to meet the enemy. The boss lifted the hammer high and smashed it down with force, but his lower body was completely defenseless. Skeleton Soldier saw this opportunity. Relying on his own resistance to blunt weapons and the dual protection of armor, he withstood the boss's attack. He then began to target the boss's lower body, moving decisively. With a swift strike, he severed one of the boss's feet. The boss staggered. Skeleton Soldier breathed a sigh of relief, but at that moment, the iron hammer struck again. The boss forcefully supported its body and knocked down Skeleton Soldier. He completed this attack. He couldn't hold on and knelt down. Skeleton Soldier propped up his sword and got up. No major injuries. The boss delivered another powerful blow. Skeleton Soldier dodged in a flash. He jumped onto the boss's head. The weak point of our skeleton. I know better than anyone else. Don't worry. I will make your head split into 5 pieces right away. The Skeleton Soldier pierced his head with a sword. The boss then died of suffocation. At this moment, a series of rank promotion windows popped up one after another. The combat power of the Skeleton Soldier increased significantly. He suddenly noticed something unusual. Swinging the sword 1,000 times? Being rewarded with a skill? What a stroke of luck. It turns out a dungeon quest has been triggered. The Skeleton Soldier follows the instructions and begins to swing the sword for the first time. The number on the task progress changes from 0 to 1. The Skeleton Soldier is overjoyed. This task is too simple, isn't it? Thinking that one doesn't need to rest, eat, or drink. It can be completed quickly. So, he started practicing in this cleaned-up dungeon. Just then, footsteps could be heard at the entrance of the dungeon. A yellow-haired woman was in front, while another red-haired woman was fawning over a mercenary in the back. The yellow-haired woman turned around and called out. The two entered the dungeon, and the Skeleton Soldier remains unaware of them. What mysterious spark will occur when he encounters them? Our story continues. Skeleton Soldier is in the cave now, waving his sword, practicing. As he studies hard, suddenly pops up in front of him.